The eviction notice was taped to the front door, right over the faded wreath my mother still hadn't taken down from last Christmas. It was cheap, flimsy paper, flapping in the breeze, but the words screamed, "Notice to vacate." I stared at it, my hand still on the handle of my rental car door. My name is Angela, and I'm 28. I'd driven 8 hours straight from my apartment in the city, fueled by nothing but stale coffee and a knot of dread in my stomach. My mom, Olive, she's 55, and she'd had a stroke. A bad one. The call from my older sister, Harper, had been clipped. Practical. "She's in a coma, Angela. You should come." "What the hell is this?" I muttered, ripping the paper off the door. It was addressed to occupant. The front door swung open before I could even knock. Kenneth, my stepfather, stood there, looking entirely too well rested for a man whose wife was fighting for her life. He's 59 and he's been married to Mom for 9 years, a period I've always privately referred to as the Dark Ages. He had that smarmy smile plastered on his face, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "Oh, Angela, you made it," he said, his voice flat. He didn't step aside, didn't offer a hug, just stood there blocking the entryway. "Kenneth, what is this?" I waved the notice in his face. "An eviction notice for Mom's house? What's going on?" He shrugged, a casual, dismissive gesture that made my blood run cold. "Just paperwork, Angela. Nothing for you to worry about." He finally stepped back, letting me into the familiar, yet suddenly alien entryway. The air inside felt heavy, like a secret. "Your mother won't need it where she's going." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, where she's going? Is she worse?" My voice cracked. I hadn't even asked about her condition yet, just assumed she was stable. He walked into the living room, gesturing vaguely towards a stack of papers on the coffee table. "The doctors aren't optimistic. It was a major stroke. She's in a deep coma. They're talking about long-term care if she even wakes up." He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "which she probably won't." I felt like I'd been punched. My strong, vibrant mother reduced to this. And Kenneth, talking about her like she was already gone. "And the house?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why an eviction notice?" He picked up a glossy real estate brochure. "I'm selling it. It's the smart thing to do. She won't be coming back here. And frankly, I need the liquidity." "Selling it? Kenneth, this is Mom's house. She bought it before she even met you." I felt a surge of anger, hot and immediate. "You can't just sell it out from under her. Does she even have a say in this?" He gave me that condescending smile again. "Angela, I have power of attorney. And the deed. Everything's in order. I have the legal right." He tapped the brochure. "It's already listed." My mind reeled. Power of attorney? The deed? This was moving way too fast. My mother had been in a coma for less than a week, and he was already trying to liquidate her assets? "This is insane," I said, pulling out my phone. "I need to talk to Harper and Alyssa." I called Harper first. She's 35, my older sister, and always the practical one, though sometimes that translated to being dismissive of anything she considered drama. She answered on the third ring. "Angela? You're there?" she said, her voice tight. "Yeah, I'm here. Harper, Kenneth is trying to sell Mom's house. He says he has power of attorney and the deed. Did you know about this?" There was a pause. "Angela, calm down." Kenneth explained it. "It's complicated, but he's doing what he thinks is best." "Mom, she's not doing well. This house is a huge expense." "Best? He's kicking Mom out of her own house while she's on life support. This is not best. This is predatory." "Oh, here we go." Harper sighed, her voice laced with exasperation. "Always so dramatic, Angela. Look, I'm busy. Kenneth knows what he's doing. Just trust him for once." She hung up before I could argue. I tried Alyssa next. She's 33, my half sister, Kenneth's daughter from a previous marriage, though she's always been fiercely loyal to him. She answered with a cheerful, "Hey, Angela, made it home, huh?" "Alyssa, Kenneth is selling the house, Mom's house. He's got an eviction notice taped to the door." Her tone immediately cooled. "Oh, that, yeah, Dad told me. It's just business, Angela. He has to think about the future. Mom wouldn't want him burdened." Burdened? She's lying in a hospital bed. This is her home. Don't you care? Of course I care about Mom, Alyssa said, her voice suddenly sharp. But you're overreacting, like always. Dad's just being responsible. You wouldn't understand. You're never around. She ended the call with a click. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling utterly alone. My own sisters siding with Kenneth. They always treated me like the emotional one, the drama magnet. But this wasn't drama. This was real. Kenneth had gone into the kitchen, probably to make himself a sandwich. I walked over to the coffee table, my eyes scanning the real estate papers he'd left scattered there. It was a standard listing agreement, property description, photos. But then I saw it, a copy of the deed, and right next to Kenneth's signature, a notary stamp. It was crisp, dark, and looked brand new. I leaned closer, my heart starting to pound. The date on the stamp? 3 days ago. 3 days ago. My mother had been in a coma for 5 days. Kenneth went back to the kitchen, humming some tuneless melody. The sound grated on my nerves. My sisters had dismissed me, just as they always did. Dramatic, overreacting, looking for attention. But the date on that notary stamp, just 2 days after Mom's stroke, screamed at me. It wasn't drama. It was a red flag the size of Texas. I had to find out more. My mother, Olive, was meticulous about paperwork. She had a filing system that bordered on obsessive. I remembered her telling me once, years ago, that she kept all the important house documents in a locked closet in her study. Just in case, she'd said with a wink, though I never knew what the just in case was for. I walked into her study, a small room off the living room that smelled faintly of old books and lavender. The closet door was a simple wooden one, with a small brass lock. I knew Mom kept a spare key hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace hearth, a secret she'd shared with me when I was a kid. I knelt down, my fingers exploring the rough surface of the bricks. Sure enough, tucked behind the third brick from the left was a tiny, tarnished key. My hands trembled slightly as I unlocked the closet. Inside, it was exactly as I remembered, neat stacks of folders labeled in Mom's elegant handwriting. Mortgage, taxes, utilities, insurance. I pulled out the one marked Mortgage, Original Docs. Back in the living room, I spread the contents of the folder across the coffee table, pushing Kenneth's glossy real estate brochure aside. There it was, the original deed to the house, dated 15 years ago, long before Kenneth was in the picture. It was clearly in Olive Meyer's name only, her signature bold and familiar. The notary stamp was faded, but legible, with the name Desmond Garcia. Then I pulled out the copy Kenneth had left, the one with the fresh notary stamp. I laid them side by side. The differences jumped out at me. The original deed was on a slightly thicker, cream colored paper. Kenneth's copy was on standard white printer paper. The font on Kenneth's version seemed off, slightly different spacing, a subtle variation in the R's and A's, and the signatures. My mother's signature on the original was fluid, confident. On Kenneth's copy, it looked hesitant, almost shaky, and the loops were just a little too perfect, like someone had tried too hard to replicate it. But the most damning detail was the notary stamp. Kenneth's copy had a stamp dated just 3 days ago, 2 days after the mom's stroke. My mother couldn't have signed anything, let alone appeared before a notary while she was in a coma. My hands clenched. This wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was calculated. I picked up the original deed again, focusing on the notary's name, Desmond Garcia. I pulled out my phone and typed his name into a search engine, adding Notary Public and the city. It took a few tries, but I found him. Desmond Garcia, Notary Public. His office address was about 20 minutes away. There was also a phone number. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the call button. What if he was in on it? What if Kenneth had paid him off? No, that didn't make sense. The original deed was 15 years old. Desmond Garcia had been a legitimate notary back then. If Kenneth was forging documents now, he wouldn't use the original notary, would he? Unless he was trying to make it look legitimate by associating it with the original transaction. I took a deep breath and dialed. A man's voice, calm and professional, answered. Desmond Garcia, Notary Services. How can I help you? Mr. Garcia, my name is Angela Meyer. I'm calling about a deed you notarized for my mother, Olive Meyer, about 15 years ago, for her house on Elm Street. Meyer, Olive Meyer, he repeated, and I could hear the rustle of papers in the background. Yes, I remember that one. Good woman. Very thorough. What about it? Well, I have a copy of a new deed, supposedly for the same property, with a notary stamp dated 3 days ago. My mother is currently in a coma after a stroke and has been for 5 days. And the signature, it doesn't look like hers. I was hoping you could confirm if you notarized anything recently for her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Finally, he spoke, his voice much colder now. Ms. Meyer, I can tell you definitively that I have not notarized any documents for Olive Meyer in the last year. In fact, I haven't seen her since probably longer than that. Definitely not in the last few days. And if she's in a coma, it would be impossible for her to sign anything, let alone appear before me for notarization. He paused, then added, his voice low and serious, if someone is using my stamp or a forged document with my name on it, that's a very serious matter. My breath hitched. He hadn't seen her in over a year, and the stamp on Kenneth's deed was dated 3 days ago. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, I managed to say, my voice trembling. Thank you so much. I hung up, my mind racing. Desmond Garcia, the original notary, hadn't seen my mother in over a year. Yet, Kenneth had a deed with a fresh notary stamp, dated after her stroke, with a signature that looked nothing like hers. And he was claiming it gave him the right to sell her house. They told me I was overreacting. They told me I was dramatic. But I had just found the first piece of undeniable proof that Kenneth Mack was lying. And this wasn't just lying. This was something far more sinister. The phone call with Desmond Garcia had left me reeling, but also with a strange sense of clarity. My gut had been right. Kenneth was a liar and a forger. The anger that had been simmering beneath my grief now boiled over, sharp and cold. I knew who I needed to talk to next. Valerie Davis. She was 38, an old family friend, practically an aunt to me growing up. She worked at the local bank, but more importantly, she also moonlit as a notary public. Mom always said Valerie was the most trustworthy person she knew when it came to legal documents. I called her, my voice tight with urgency. Valerie, it's Angela Meyer. I need your help. It's about Mom and Kenneth. I quickly explained everything: Mom's stroke, Kenneth's attempt to sell the house, the eviction notice, the suspicious new deed, and Desmond Garcia's confirmation. Valerie listened patiently, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a quiet seriousness. Angela, that sounds incredibly alarming, she said. Can you bring me the documents, both the original deed and Kenneth's copy? I'm at the bank until 5, but I can meet you after that, or even now if you can get here quickly. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, grabbing the two deeds. I didn't want to leave them at the house, not with Kenneth lurking. The bank was a blur of muted colors and hushed voices. Valerie met me in a small private office. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp as she took the documents from my trembling hands. She laid them side by side on her desk, just as I had done. She pulled out a magnifying glass, the kind notaries use, and began to scrutinize them. First, the original deed. She ran her finger over the paper, examined the ink, the faded notary stamp. This looks perfectly legitimate, Angela. Classic Olive. Her signature is unmistakable. Then she turned to Kenneth's copy. Her brow furrowed almost immediately. She leaned in close, tracing the lines of the supposed signature. This this isn't Olive's signature. Not really. It's a very good attempt. I'll give them that. But look at the pressure points, the way the O connects to the L. Olive always had a distinctive flourish here. This is too stiff. And the consistency of the ink, it's too uniform, like someone tracing or using a stamp, not a natural flow. She then looked at the notary stamp. And this stamp. Desmond Garcia's name is on it. But the date? 3 days ago? Angela, if your mother was in a coma, there's no way she could have appeared before a notary. A notary has to personally witness the signing, verify identity, and confirm the signer is of sound mind and acting under their own free will. This is highly irregular, potentially fraudulent. My heart hammered against my ribs. So it's a forgery? Valerie nodded slowly. It certainly appears to be, and the fact that Desmond confirms he didn't notarize it, that's damning. This isn't just a mismatched signature. This is potentially criminal. Forgery, attempted fraud, elder abuse. It's serious. What do I do? I asked, feeling a flicker of hope, but also a new wave of fear. First, we need more official proof. I can help you request the official property records from the county clerk's office. We can also pull transaction logs to see if there have been any other suspicious filings. As a notary, I have access to some of the databases that can expedite this. She picked up her phone. I'll start the requests right now. It might take a day or two to get the official copies, but we can get a preliminary look. As we were discussing the next steps, my phone buzzed. It was Kenneth. I ignored it. Then he called again and again. He was clearly getting agitated. When I got back to the house, Kenneth was waiting for me, arms crossed, a dark look on his face. He'd clearly seen me leave with the documents. "Where have you been, Angela?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. "And what were you doing with my wife's personal papers?" "They're Mom's papers, Kenneth, not yours." I shot back, walking past him towards the back of the house, and I was simply making sure everything was in order. "Everything is in order!" he growled, following me. "I told you, I have the legal right to sell this house. You're interfering with a legal transaction. I can have you removed from the property. I can sue you for harassment." "You can try," I said, heading towards the small storage room off the garage. Mom kept some of her older, more sentimental belongings in there, things she didn't want in the main house. I remembered her mentioning a box of old photos and letters. Maybe there was something else there. Kenneth suddenly stepped in front of the storage room door, blocking my path. "You're not going in there, Angela." "Those are my wife's private things." "They're Mom's things, Kenneth, and I have every right to look through them," I said, trying to push past him. He didn't budge. He was a big man, and his stance was surprisingly firm. "I'm warning you, Angela," he said, his eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this. You're making things worse for everyone, especially for your mother." The veiled threat in his voice sent a chill down my spine, but it also hardened my resolve. He wouldn't be trying so hard to stop me if there wasn't something to hide. I glared at him. "Get out of my way, Kenneth." He just stood there, unmoving. I knew I couldn't physically overpower him, but I also knew he wasn't going to stop me from finding out the truth. Not now. I turned away from the door, pretending to give up, and walked slowly back towards the living room. Kenneth watched me, a smirk playing on his lips, thinking he'd won, but I was just biding my time. Later that evening, after Kenneth had gone out, probably to the real estate agent or to one of his secret gambling dens, I went back to the storage room. I used a small screwdriver to jimmy the lock on the door. It was a cheap lock, and it gave way easily. Inside, among dusty boxes and forgotten furniture, I found it. A sturdy, metal reinforced storage box, tucked away behind a stack of old blankets. It was heavy, and on the lid, written in Mom's unmistakable handwriting, were three chilling words: "In case of Kenneth." My hands shook as I reached for it. What could possibly be inside that Mom felt needed to be hidden specifically from him? My heart pounded. This wasn't just about a deed anymore. This was about secrets. The metal box was heavy, and the label, "In case of Kenneth," sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't locked, just latched. I carried it back to my mother's study, the only place I felt truly safe from Kenneth's prying eyes, and clicked on the small desk lamp. Inside, nestled among bundles of old letters and a few worn photo albums, was a cassette tape. It was clearly labeled, again in Mom's handwriting, "Kenneth, my truth." My breath caught in my throat. A cassette tape? In this day and age? But then I remembered Mom's old stereo system in the living room, a relic she refused to part with. I found the stereo, a bulky, wood-paneled monstrosity, and fumbled with the cassette deck. The tape clicked into place. I pressed play, turning the volume low, my ear practically glued to the speaker. A familiar voice filled the quiet room. My mother's voice. But it was different. It was hushed, almost a whisper, laced with a tremor I'd never heard before. She sounded scared. This is this is for me, I suppose. Mom's voice began, a little shaky. Or for Angela, if she ever finds it. I don't know who else to tell. Kenneth, he's changed. He's not the man I married. He's been pressuring me about the house, saying we should put it in both our names or sell it. But I won't. This house is mine. It's for my girls. It's my security. My eyes welled up. She knew. She knew what he was capable of. He's been going through my papers when I'm not home. Her voice continued, growing stronger, more resolute. I've caught him. He denies it, of course, but I've seen him. He's looking for something. He's even tried to get me to sign things, saying they're for taxes or for a new joint account. But I've read them carefully. Some of them, they're not what he says they are. I've refused. I've told him I won't sign anything regarding the house. A cold dread settled in my stomach. So, Kenneth had been trying this for a while. I'm keeping the originals safe, Mom's voice said, a little louder now, as if she was trying to convince herself. The original deed, the mortgage documents, my will, they're all here, in this box. And I've made digital copies too. They're on a USB drive, hidden in the old photo album, the one with the blue cover, under the loose lining. She paused, and I heard a shaky breath. I don't trust him, Angela. I really don't. He's got secrets, gambling debts, I think. And he's been talking about a second property he lost, something about a foreclosure. He's desperate. If anything happens to me, if I can't speak for myself, please, Angela, don't let him take this house. It's all I have left for you girls. The tape clicked, signaling the end. I sat there, stunned. My mother, so strong, so private, had been living in fear, and she had left me a roadmap. I immediately went back to the metal box. I found the blue photo album, its cover faded from years of handling. My fingers searched along the inner lining until I felt a slight give. I carefully peeled back the fabric, and there it was, a small, black USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. A folder popped up labeled House Docs Scanned. Inside, there were PDFs, scans of the original deed, the mortgage, property tax records, and even a scanned copy of her will, clearly stating the house was to be divided equally between Harper and me upon her passing. Each file was dated and time stamped. The most recent one was from 3 months ago, long before her stroke. This was undeniable proof. Kenneth's claims were completely contradicted by my mother's own meticulously documented truth. I knew I couldn't face Kenneth alone. I needed a lawyer, and the only lawyer I knew who I trusted was Sterling Tran. He was 42, my ex boyfriend. We hadn't ended badly, just drifted apart, but he was a sharp real estate lawyer. I hated the idea of calling him, but I was desperate. I found his number in my old contacts and dialed. He answered on the second ring. Angela? Wow, it's been a while, he said, his voice surprisingly warm. Sterling, I know this is out of the blue, but I need your help. It's about my mother and her house. I think my stepfather is trying to steal it. I laid out the whole story, from the eviction notice to Desmond Garcia's call, Valerie's confirmation, and finally the cassette tape and the USB drive. I could hear him taking notes on the other end. There was a long silence when I finished. Angela, he finally said, his voice serious. This is a lot, and it's very serious. Forgery, elder abuse, attempted grand theft. This isn't just a civil dispute. This could be criminal. So you'll help me? I pleaded. He sighed. Look, Angela, you know I'm good at this, but this is going to be messy. Your stepfather is going to fight dirty. And if your own family is siding with him, this could get ugly. If your family turns on you, I can't protect you from all of it. Are you ready for that? I'm ready, I said, my voice firm. I have to protect my mother and her home. All right, Sterling said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Send me everything you have, the deeds, the notary info, the audio file, the scanned documents. I'll start drafting an emergency injunction to halt the sale immediately. We need to get this in front of a judge ASAP. I felt a surge of relief, the first in days. Sterling was on my side. Maybe, just maybe, I could fight this. I was still sitting at the desk, emailing Sterling the files, when I heard a car pull up outside. Then the front door opened. I froze. It was too early for Kenneth to be back. Footsteps in the hallway. Then a voice, Angela, are you in here? It was Harper, my older sister. But she wasn't alone. I heard another, deeper voice, and then the unmistakable sound of a uniform rustling. I walked into the living room. Harper stood there, her arms crossed, a grim expression on her face. Next to her was a man in a sharp suit, holding a briefcase, and behind them a sheriff's deputy, his hand resting on his belt. Harper? What's going on? I asked, my heart plummeting. Harper looked at me, her eyes cold. We're here to make sure you leave, Angela. Kenneth's lawyer just got a temporary order to vacate the premises. You're being removed from the house. Harper's words hung in the air, cold and sharp. We're here to make sure you leave, Angela. Kenneth's lawyer just got a temporary order to vacate the premises. You're being removed from the house. My blood ran cold. I looked from Harper's unyielding face to the man in the suit, who held a sheaf of papers, and then to the sheriff's deputy, whose expression was impassive. This was it. Kenneth was playing dirty, just like Sterling had warned. He wasn't just trying to sell the house, he was trying to erase me from the picture entirely. Are you serious, Harper? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You're doing this? To me? While Mom is in a coma? Harper's jaw was set. Angela, you're causing problems. Kenneth has power of attorney. He's doing what's responsible for Mom's estate. You're just making things difficult. Responsible? He's trying to steal her house. I have proof, Harper. I have Mom's own words, a tape, documents, a notary who says the deed is a forgery. Oh, for God's sake, Angela, Harper scoffed, rolling her eyes. Always with the drama. A tape? Really? You think Kenneth, a successful businessman, would risk everything for a house? You're delusional. He's trying to do the right thing, and you're just making a scene. The lawyer stepped forward, holding out the papers. Ms. Meyer, this is a temporary restraining order and an order to vacate. As of this moment, you are legally required to leave the premises. If you do not comply, the sheriff will escort you. My mind raced. Sterling, the emergency injunction. He'd said he was drafting it. Had he filed it yet? I'm not leaving, I said, my voice gaining strength. This is my mother's house, and I have legal representation. My lawyer is filing an emergency injunction to halt this sale and this order. The lawyer chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. An emergency injunction? Ms. Meyer, those take time. You're grasping at straws. The order is effective immediately. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Sterling. I snatched it from my pocket, my heart leaping. Sterling? They're here. Kenneth's lawyer and a sheriff. They have an order to vacate. Angela, listen carefully. Sterling's voice was calm, but urgent. I just filed the emergency motion. The judge signed it. It's a temporary stay on any sale or eviction proceedings until a hearing can be held. It's effective immediately. I'm emailing you the filed document now. Show it to them. My fingers flew across the screen, opening my email. There it was, a PDF stamped with the court seal, dated just minutes ago. Order granting temporary stay. I have it, I said, holding up my phone. My lawyer just filed an emergency stay. The judge signed it. You can't remove me. The lawyer's smug expression faltered. That's impossible. We just filed this order. Well, you were a little slow, I retorted, my voice shaking with adrenaline. I walked over to the sheriff's deputy, holding out my phone. Here, read it. It's from Judge Miller. It halts everything. The deputy took my phone, his eyes scanning the document. His impassive expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He handed it back to me and turned to Kenneth's lawyer. She's right. This is a valid court order. It supersedes your temporary order. All proceedings are stayed until a hearing. Kenneth's lawyer's face flushed red. This is outrageous. We had no notification. That's not my problem, the deputy said, shrugging. My orders are to enforce valid court orders, and this one is valid. You'll have to take it up with the judge. He turned to me. Ms. Meyer, you are free to remain on the premises until further notice from the court. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. I had done it. I had stopped them. For now. Harper, however, looked furious. This is ridiculous, Angela. You're just dragging this out. You're still the bitter little girl looking for attention, aren't you? Always have to be the martyr. Just then, Alyssa walked in, having apparently just arrived. She took in the scene the lawyer, the deputy, Harper's angry face, and my defiant stance. What's going on? Alyssa asked, her eyes wide. Angela's trying to make a mess of everything, as usual, Harper snapped. She just pulled some stunt with a last minute court order. Now we can't even get her out of mom's house. Alyssa looked at me, her expression a mixture of disdain and exasperation. Honestly, Angela, you're still the bitter little girl looking for attention. Dad's doing everything he can, and you're just making it harder for everyone. The words stung, but I stood my ground. They could call me whatever they wanted. I knew the truth, and the truth was on my side. Kenneth's lawyer, defeated for the moment, gathered his papers. We'll see you in court, Miss Meyer, he said, his voice laced with venom. I look forward to it, I replied, my voice steady. As they all turned to leave, the deputy lingered for a moment. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Then he followed the others out. I watched them go, the heavy front door closing behind them. I was alone in the house again, but this time it felt different. I hadn't been removed. I had fought back. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Sterling. Good job. Now, let's get to work. That notary, Desmond Garcia, just called me. He said he found something even more damning. The notarization on that fraudulent deed was filed while Olive was already under hospital observation, making legal consent impossible. My jaw dropped. Not just in a coma, but under observation. That meant she was legally incapacitated before the fraudulent document was even filed. The net was closing in. Sterling's text about Desmond Garcia hit me like a jolt of electricity. Not just in a coma, but under hospital observation before the fraudulent deed was filed. That was the final nail in Kenneth's coffin, the undeniable proof of his malicious intent. This wasn't just a sneaky attempt to grab assets, this was a calculated criminal act. The next morning, I gathered every piece of evidence I had the original deed, Kenneth's forged copy, the cassette tape, the USB drive with mom's scanned documents, and the printout of Sterling's emergency stay order. I also brought the timeline I'd meticulously put together, detailing mom's hospital admission, the date of the stroke, and the date on Kenneth's fraudulent notary stamp. Sterling had arranged a meeting with Desmond Garcia at his office. Valerie Davis, bless her, insisted on coming along as another set of eyes and an expert witness. She was already there when Sterling and I arrived, sitting calmly in Desmond's waiting area. Desmond Garcia's office was small, neat, and filled with stacks of legal books. He was a man in his early 40s with kind eyes behind wire rimmed glasses. He looked tired but determined. Ms. Meyer, thank you for coming, he said, shaking my hand firmly, and Mr. Tran, Ms. Davis. I appreciate you all being here. What you've brought to my attention is deeply disturbing. I laid out all the documents on his desk. Mr. Garcia, here's the original deed you notarized for my mother 15 years ago, and here's the copy Kenneth Mack provided, with the fraudulent notary stamp dated 3 days after her stroke. Desmond picked up the original deed first, running his fingers over the faded ink. Yes, this is my work. My signature, my stamp, my log entry from that day. He then picked up Kenneth's copy. He frowned, his brow furrowing deeper. He pulled out a magnifying glass and examined the stamp. The stamp itself, it's a good imitation, but the ink is too dark, too fresh for a stamp that's supposedly 15 years old. And the signature, it's not mine, not even close. He then pulled out a large bound ledger. This is my notary log. Every document I notarize, I log here. Date, time, type of document, name of signer, and how I verified their identity. I have no entry for Olive Meyer on the date this stamp indicates. He flipped through the pages, his finger tracing down the columns. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing for her in the last year, as I told you. And the date on that fraudulent deed, Sterling interjected, is 3 days after my client's mother, Olive Meyer, suffered a major stroke and was admitted to the hospital, where she remains in a coma. Desmond's face, which had been pale, now went chalk white. He picked up my timeline, his eyes scanning the dates. Hospital admission, stroke, and then this notarization date. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. Ms. Meyer, I have access to a secure database that notaries use to verify certain public records, including hospital admissions for legal purposes, especially when dealing with power of attorney or property transfers for incapacitated individuals. I can cross reference the hospital admission records with the date on this fraudulent document. He turned to his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Valerie and I watched in silent anticipation, Sterling standing beside me, his hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder. A few clicks, a few seconds of loading. Then Desmond froze. His eyes were glued to the screen, and his jaw slowly dropped. He looked up at me, his face a mask of shock and outrage. Angela, he said, his voice barely a whisper. This document, it was filed at 10:17 a.m. on the date it bears. Your mother was admitted to St. Jude's Hospital at 8 a.m. that same morning. She was already under medical observation, legally incapacitated, and certainly not capable of appearing before a notary, let alone signing anything. He paused, then took a deep, shuddering breath. His hand reached for the phone on his desk. This isn't just fraud, Ms. Meyer, he said, his voice now firm, resolute. This is a crime. A blatant, undeniable felony. I have a legal and ethical obligation to report this. He looked at me, then at Sterling, then at Valerie. His hand, still trembling slightly, picked up the receiver. He dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, this is Desmond Garcia, a licensed notary public. I need to report a clear case of felony forgery and attempted grand theft. I have irrefutable evidence that a fraudulent property deed was filed using a forged notary stamp and signature for an individual who was legally incapacitated and hospitalized at the time of the alleged notarization. He rattled off Kenneth's name, my mother's name, and the property address. The room was silent except for Desmond's voice, detailing the evidence to the dispatcher. My heart pounded. This was it. The police were coming. Kenneth was going down. Later that night, the phone rang. It was Sterling. Angela, he said, his voice grim, Kenneth Mack was arrested about an hour ago. They picked him up at a casino just outside of town. Felony forgery, attempted grand theft, and elder abuse. The evidence was overwhelming thanks to you, Desmond, and Valerie. A wave of dizzying relief washed over me. He was arrested. Justice. But, Sterling continued, and I braced myself, he's already claiming it's a misunderstanding, that he had power of attorney, that Olive signed it weeks ago, and he just had it notarized later. His lawyer is already filing a civil suit to delay the criminal trial, trying to bog us down in court. He's claiming you're harassing him and interfering with his legal rights. My relief was tempered by a new surge of anger. Even now he was fighting. Even now he was lying. But this time, he was lying from a jail cell. And this time, I had the truth. The civil suit Kenneth's lawyer filed was a desperate attempt to muddy the waters, to delay the inevitable, but Sterling was ready. He filed a motion to dismiss, citing the ongoing criminal investigation and the overwhelming evidence of fraud. The judge, having seen the initial emergency stay, agreed to expedite the criminal trial. Justice, it seemed, was not going to be delayed. Weeks blurred into a tense waiting game. My life revolved around meetings with Sterling, reviewing evidence, and preparing for court. Harper and Alyssa remained silent, not calling, not checking on Mom, just leaving me to shoulder everything. It hurt, but it also solidified my resolve. This wasn't just for Mom anymore. It was for me, for the truth, for every time they'd dismissed me as dramatic. The day of the trial finally arrived. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and intimidating. Kenneth sat at the defense table looking surprisingly composed, a sneer playing on his lips as he occasionally glanced my way. His lawyer, a slick, aggressive type, seemed confident. Sterling, however, looked calm and prepared. He gave me a reassuring nod as I took my place in the gallery. The prosecution laid out its case methodically, starting with the timeline of Mom's stroke and hospital admission. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. I recounted everything. Finding the eviction notice, the suspicious deed, my sister's dismissals, finding mom's hidden box, the cassette tape, the USB drive. I presented the original deed, the forged one, and explained the discrepancies. And your mother was in a coma at the time this alleged signing and notarization took place? The prosecutor asked. Yes, I confirmed, looking directly at Kenneth. She was admitted to St. Jude's Hospital at 8 a.m. on that date. The fraudulent deed was notarized at 10:17 a.m. that same morning. Next up was Desmond Garcia. He was a powerful witness. He testified about his original notarization of Mom's deed 15 years ago, confirming its authenticity. Then, he meticulously explained how the stamp and signature on Kenneth's version were forgeries, backed by his notary log. He detailed his cross referencing of hospital records, confirming Mom's incapacitation at the exact time the fraudulent document was filed. His testimony was damning, leaving no room for doubt. Valerie Davis followed, corroborating Desmond's analysis of the signatures and the notary stamp, explaining the intricacies of document authenticity to the jury. She spoke with quiet authority, her words carrying significant weight. Sterling then took the floor for his part, focusing on Kenneth's motive. He presented financial records obtained through subpoenas that painted a grim picture of Kenneth's life. He had significant gambling debts, stretching back years, and had recently lost a second property to foreclosure just 2 months prior. Mr. Mack, Sterling stated, addressing the court, was not acting out of concern for his wife's estate. He was acting out of desperation. He needed money quickly, and he saw a vulnerable woman incapacitated by illness as his opportunity to seize her most valuable asset. Kenneth's lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled him. Then came the part I dreaded, my sisters. Harper and Alyssa had been subpoenaed by the prosecution, forced to testify. They walked to the stand, looking uncomfortable, their faces pale. Harper went first. She was dismissive, evasive. I don't know anything about any forged deeds. Kenneth said he had the right to sell the house. He's Mom's husband. I trusted him. She stonewalled every question about her knowledge of Kenneth's financial troubles or her mother's concerns about him. She maintained her stance that I was just being dramatic and interfering. Her embarrassment was palpable, but her loyalty to Kenneth, or perhaps just her pride, kept her from admitting anything. Then it was Alyssa's turn. She looked even more uncomfortable than Harper. Her husband, Adrian, 31, was sitting in the gallery looking meek and passive as usual, offering her no support. Alyssa tried to maintain her composure, repeating Kenneth's narrative. But under Sterling's relentless, calm questioning, the cracks began to show. "Miss Cunningham," Sterling asked, "did your father ever discuss his financial difficulties with you, his gambling debts, the foreclosure of his other property?" Alyssa's eyes darted to Kenneth, then back to Sterling. She hesitated. I I don't know anything about that. Isn't it true that your father asked you for money just a few months ago, stating he was in dire straits?" Sterling pressed, holding up a document. "We have bank records showing a transfer from your account to his." Alyssa's face crumpled. She looked at Kenneth, who was now glaring at her, shaking his head almost imperceptibly, but the pressure was too much. He he said it was for a business investment, she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. He just needed a little help. He said he'd pay me back. She broke down sobbing. "I didn't know. He swore he had the right. He said Mom signed it. He said Angela was crazy." Her confession, though tearful and self serving, was enough. It confirmed Kenneth's desperation and his manipulation of his own daughter. Kenneth's lawyer tried to salvage things, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury returned a verdict quickly. Guilty. The judge, a stern woman with piercing eyes, looked directly at Kenneth. "Mr. Mack, the evidence presented in this court has revealed a calculated, cold hearted attempt to defraud an incapacitated woman, your own wife, and steal her home. Your actions are not merely illegal, they are a profound betrayal of trust and an egregious act of elder abuse. This court finds you guilty of felony forgery, attempted grand theft, and elder abuse." She paused, her voice ringing through the silent courtroom. "Given the severity of your crimes, your lack of remorse, and the vulnerable state of your victim, I am denying bail. You are a danger to the community and a flight risk. I hereby sentence you to a term of 10 years in state prison." and you will pay full restitution for all legal fees incurred by the victim and forfeit any assets used in the commission of this crime. Kenneth's face went slack, then contorted into a mask of pure rage. He lunged forward, yelling, "You can't do this! I'll be back! You haven't seen the last of me!" Bailiffs immediately moved to restrain him, pulling him away, his furious shouts echoing through the courtroom as he was led away. I sat there, numb, watching him go. It was over. He was gone. The house was safe. My mother was safe. But the victory felt hollow, tinged with the bitter taste of what it had cost. My family, what was left of it, was shattered. Weeks after the trial, the hospital called. It was the call I'd been waiting for, praying for, dreading all at once. My mother, Olive, had shown signs of consciousness. She was stirring. I dropped everything and raced to the hospital. The room was quiet, the machines still beeping softly, but the air felt different, hopeful. Mom's eyes were open, unfocused, blinking slowly. Her gaze drifted around the room, confused. "Mom?" I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I reached for her hand, gently, carefully. Her fingers twitched, a faint squeeze. Her eyes finally landed on me, a flicker of recognition. "Angela?" Her voice was a raspy whisper, barely audible. "What what happened?" I didn't even know where to begin. How do you tell someone they've been in a coma for weeks? That their husband tried to steal their home, that their own daughter sided with him, that he's now in prison? "You had a stroke, Mom," I started, keeping my voice calm, gentle. "A bad one. You've been resting." She tried to move, a slight tremor in her hand. "The house, Kenneth," he was talking about papers. Her brow furrowed, a faint memory stirring. I took a deep breath. "The house is safe, Mom. It's still yours. Kenneth, he tried to sell it. He tried to forge your signature on a new deed, but we stopped him." Her eyes widened, a flash of something like fear, then understanding. He he did it. It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation of her own fears, the ones she'd voiced on that cassette tape. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "He did, but he's gone now. He's in prison for forgery and fraud and elder abuse. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't take anything from you." Tears welled in her eyes, slowly tracing paths down her temples. Not tears of sadness, not entirely. They were tears of relief, of betrayal, of a quiet, profound grief for the life she'd almost lost, and the man she had married. "My girls," she whispered, her voice stronger now. "Harper? Alyssa?" I hesitated. They they testified at the trial, Mom. They were subpoenaed. They sided with Kenneth at first. They believed his lies, but the truth came out. I couldn't bring myself to sugarcoat it. She deserved the truth. She closed her eyes for a long moment, a single tear escaping. "Oh," was all she said. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken pain. Over the next few days, as Mom slowly regained a little more strength, I filled in the gaps. I told her about Desmond Garcia, about Valerie, about Sterling. I told her about the tape, about her foresight, her secret preparations. She listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes just staring into the distance. She was quiet, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. The house remained in Olive's name, untouched. Kenneth's assets, what little he had left after his gambling debts, were seized to cover restitution for legal fees, just as the judge had ordered. He was gone, his influence a toxic cloud that had finally dissipated. Harper and Alyssa never called. Not to check on Mom, not to apologize, not to acknowledge anything. Their silence was deafening, a stark testament to the chasm that had opened between us. I knew they were ashamed, probably embarrassed by the public spectacle of the trial and Alyssa's breakdown on the stand. But their shame didn't bridge the gap, it only widened it. The family, as I had known it, was irrevocably shattered. A few days after Mom was moved to a rehabilitation facility, Valerie called me. "Angela, you did it. You saved your mother and her home. You know, you could sue Kenneth for emotional damages." For all the stress, the trauma, the legal fees you personally incurred, you have a strong case. I thought about it for a moment. The sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the betrayal from my own sisters, the anger. But then I looked at my mother, slowly, painstakingly relearning how to speak, how to move. That was my victory. That was my justice. No, Valerie, I said, my voice calm. I won't. I got what I needed. He's in prison. Mom is safe. The house is safe. That's enough. I was tired, so incredibly tired, but I wasn't broken. I had fought and I had won, but the cost was real. I stood alone in many ways, but I stood on solid ground. A few weeks later, Mom was home. She was still frail, still undergoing therapy, but she was home. The house felt different now, lighter, like a dark cloud had lifted. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples, I sat on the porch swing with Mom. She was wrapped in a blanket, her head resting on my shoulder. We didn't talk much, just watched the colors fade, enjoying the quiet peace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Sterling. "Justice looks good on you." I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. It was true. It felt good. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Not the dramatic one, not the overlooked one, just Angela.